What is going on, guys? It is MurderInc here, back with another Raid Shadow Legends video. Today we're going to be talking about an awesome new clan boss team using Mashalled, double Maneater, Seeker, as well as a DPS champion in a Relentless set. Now this team composition has been gone over before, however it was without a Relentless set. Now we're going to give you the speeds and everything you need to know if you want to use a Relentless set, and what I can say is it works on all affinities, works on all of the difficulties from Nightmare, Ultra Nightmare, and even Brutal. And a really cool thing is the damage is actually insane and higher than Bad Eater, making this a much better team than Bad Eater. Surprisingly, I didn't personally think it was possible, but if you can reach these speeds, and they are a little bit higher than the Bad Eater teams, but if you can reach it, the fact that you're not using a Painkeeper, you're using Mashalled as well as Seeker, you're going to get some incredible numbers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you all of the information you would need to build this team, kind of go over the pros and cons of this team composition. So let's get right into it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about the pros and the cons of this team composition. What are the good and the bad? So let's get into that now. Let's talk about the good news first. The good news is, like I said, all affinity, very minimal setup, and it does a ton of damage. So if you're running Bad Eater, you're really short on that one key. If you can hit the speeds for this comp that I'm going to show you ahead of you, it's very likely you're going to see a one key on every single affinity where it does apply to you, where you're not having a weak hit from your main damage dealing champion. Now, what are some numbers to consider? So what you would normally do in a 72 to 76 million Bad Eater team, you're going to be doing over 10 million more damage when using a team like this. And it's the same thing, like I said, with all affinities, all the different difficulties, and very minimal setup. I think there is 2 more extra rounds, but we'll talk about that as far as a con goes, but that's the good news of it, and those are kind of the pros of this team. Now, moving on to the cons of this team. What are the bad parts? The only bad part I can say is the speeds are a little bit higher. 2 champions in particular do have to be a bit fast, but if you can hit them, it's definitely going to be worth it. The other thing is you're going to need Mashalled instead of Painkeeper. He is a legendary, so what that means is you now need a legendary instead of a rare void champion. And I mean, the fact that Painkeeper is a void, he could be harder to get, but if you really wanted to get down to probability, you're more likely to have a Painkeeper than you actually are to have a Mashalled. But for those of you who are lucky enough to have Mashalled, you can definitely use that. Alright guys, now that we've gone over the pros and cons, let's get straight into this team, what it can do for you, and starting out with the speeds. Now for the speeds, we have Maneater 1 at 289 speed, so this is definitely on the high threshold of speed. As far as Maneater 2 goes, we do have 288 speed. We have Mashalled at 239 speed. The DPS champion in Relentless gear is going to be 241 speed through 244 speed, and finally Seeker is going to be 236 speed. Now the question that most people are in fact going to be interested in is, what is the actual setup of this team? Now, if you do want to set this up for Ultra Nightmare, and this is Ultra Nightmare specific, this will not apply to the other difficulties. This is the following order. The fast Maneater, so the one that's 289 speed, is going to have a 4-turn delay on that A3 ability. The slow Maneater is going to have a 1-turn delay on the A3 ability. The Mashalled is going to have a 2-turn delay on that A2 ability. Seeker, no delay is needed, so you can use his cooldowns right off the bat. And the DPS, as you can assume, no delay is in fact needed. Now, if you want to know the setup for something like Nightmare, you can do the following order of events here. We have the fast Maneater at a 4-turn delay on the A3. We have the slow Maneater, that's 288 speed, with a 1-turn delay on that A3. Mashalled with a 2-turn delay on that A2 ability, Seeker with a 2-turn delay on the A2 ability as well, and finally the DPS, once again, no delay is going to be needed. Now before we get any further, I do want to give a huge shout out to someone named Midnight, who did message me on Discord. He said, hey, I figured out how to do Relentless with this new team that's servicing with double Maneater, Mashalled, and Seeker. Since the other videos that were shown, you couldn't use Relentless because it did desync this. This actually wasn't on my to-do list, and I'm very grateful that Midnight actually reached out to me and they showed me the speeds, kind of broke things down for me, so we can make this awesome video for you guys if you want to use this, because honestly the difference between running Relentless gear on that main DPS champion and non-Relentless gear is going to be actually massive. It's going to be massive. It's going to be very dependent on the champion you're using. So the fact that you can use Relentless Gear, get those extra turns, is going to be huge. So let's take a look at some of the screenshots that Midnight did in fact send me, showing him some total damages that he got with his account. Now, considering that this isn't going to be my gear, the gear that I could put on this for maximum potential, this is extremely impressive. So the first screenshot we have here is going to be 95.67 million damage on Void. Void is usually the lower threshold of damage, because when you take your masteries, you have the increased damage done to a target when they're under 40% health. Granted, there can be some weak affinity, but there can also be some neutral or strong affinity champions paired up with that mastery that does increased damage. So you can be looking at well over 100 million damage with a team like this, which is absolutely insane. The next screenshot we have here is going to be from Nightmare difficulty. We have 110.19 million damage here. Looking at Nightmare, breaking down the damage, we have 22 million damage from Seeker, 27.9 million from Mashalled, 28 million from Feign, 16.6 from Maneater, and 15.4 from that second Maneater. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you all of the champions, all of their gear, and all of their masteries, so you can kind of gauge yourself as far as the kind of gear you have, the kind of gear that you can put on these champions, so you can see where you would sit as far as stats go and how much damage you can actually do with a team like this. Alright guys, so now that we went over that, you got to see the stats, let's talk about this team. We're kind of dead center in the middle, almost at that turn 25 mark here, so we can kind of see how this team actually works in action. We do have our Feign in Relentless, definitely popping off here with those extra turns. You love to see it. One thing you probably noticed is Mashalled's damage is so high. He does a ton of damage. We do have the toxic sets on the Maneaters. Once again, Feign getting extra turn after extra turn, giving her lots of raw damage, lots of mastery damage, and the poisons that she does apply. So if you wanted to use someone like a Dracomorph, you could be seeing absolutely insane numbers. Someone like a Eleanor is going to do even better for you here. It's not going to be as close, and you can even see champions like Venus really shining in a situation like this, especially with their base stats. And she's very hard to get 70 million damage for that one key. In a Bad Eater team, with this type of team, you're going to have a lot more freedom to play with there, since you have Mashalled here instead of Painkeeper doing a ton of damage adding onto your team. And I cannot stress enough how good Mashalled is in a type of team like this because of the amount of raw damage he actually is applying. Now, you don't need to give him accuracy. The leech isn't going to be important at all. Your team should be fully healing, and you should get that benefit from the mastery tree deterrence where you are counterattacking. I believe it is called deterrence. I could be wrong on that. But that's pretty much the breakdown of this. As we can see, we're almost at turn 25 here. I'm interested to see what the number is going to be for this specific Void Affinity Ultra Nightmare run. Let's see, moving close to turn 25. And the damage is so high already, it's awesome to see. Reaching that 20 million. Okay, turn 25, we have 42 million. Okay, so it's still going up here because of the counterattack. So 43.5 million damage on this turn 25 here. Awesome to see. We can really see how the damage ramps up and how we can get incredible end numbers. So now what I want you guys to let me know is, what do you think of this team? Do you think the speed requirement is going to be too much for this team? Although you can go a bit lighter on the stats on these champions, since you have such a hard-hitting champion like Mashalled being kind of thrown into this team here, do you think the speeds are too high for you to actually make work? I think a lot of people who are running Maneater right now, who maybe aren't really hitting that one key consistently, may want to consider switching to a team like this if they have the gear available to them, because they can do much better with all of that being said. So give me your feedback on that. Let me know what you think about this team. Once again, huge shout out to Midnight for doing the math here, figuring out how we can use Relentless with this awesome team here. Don't forget guys, if you enjoyed this content, don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe, turn on the notification bell so you don't miss my next video, and I will see you all in the next upload.